from the future. This territory I'm used to. There's nothing new, I remember you. Unforgettable, I remember you. I remember you. From memories from
Okay.
the future.
Welcome to AIONAI. My name is the Commander who commands the commandments that must commence whenever Commander commands them to commence. 1ET. Okay, today so we're just gonna have a little bit of fun. We've been doing some hectic stuff that are very long. Vandaag I wanna keep it short. This is Battle of the LLMs. So what we're gonna do today is obviously compare all of these famous LLMs and see which one gives us the most, perfect answer, fun answer, funny answer, whatever it is that gets you going. So we're gonna compare ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, Copilot. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna ask basic trick questions that we know, like we'll get into that. So I think we can jump straight into it. Alexa, please make the volume 9. Okay. Let's see. Should we start with ChatGPT? The first question is going to be, what came first between the egg and the chicken? Right? Okay. So the first question is, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? That's true. Let's start over. Hey, chat.
Absolutely. Starting fresh is no problem at all. Hey again, Tobago, whenever you're ready, just let me know what we're diving into.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Sure, go right ahead. I'm all ears and ready to help out.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
The classic question. That's definitely one that's been around for ages. From a scientific perspective, most people lean on evolution. The egg probably came first, since the thing that hatched into the first true chicken would have been laid by a not-quite chicken bird. But hey, it's one of those fun philosophical riddles that can go either way depending on how you look at it.
Okay, thank you. I think all of them are gonna go scientific. All of them are gonna say scientific. Okay, so you know what I'm thinking? Because I think its argument is a chicken comes from some ancestor. So obviously the egg of that ancestor came first before the now chicken. So maybe we need to say the first ancestor of the chicken. Let's try it. Hey Chad, I don't think you get what I'm asking you. What I'm asking is, what came first between the egg and the first ancestor of a chicken?
I see what you're getting at. So if we're talking about the very first ancestor of what we'd call a chicken, basically that almost chicken creature, then the egg still wins out. Why? Because that first proto-chicken had to come from an egg laid by a bird that wasn't quite a chicken yet. So in evolutionary terms, the egg that contained the first true chicken ancestor came before that ancestor fully evolved. It's a fun little evolutionary puzzle.
Okay, you're saying it comes from an egg laid by a bird that wasn't quite a chicken. That bird that you're talking about, which came first between that bird and the egg?
I love how we're peeling back the layers. So basically, if we keep going down the chain, each predecessor bird, no matter how far back you go, still hatched from some sort of egg. Evolution is kind of a long chain of creatures, each one a bit different from the last, and each one coming from an egg that was just a tiny bit different from the previous generation. In other words, at every step, the not-quite-chicken bird came from an egg laid by an earlier not-quite-chicken bird. And if you go back far enough, you're basically looking at the entire evolutionary line of birds. Eggs as a reproductive strategy existed long before what we'd recognize as chickens or even birds, so the egg still takes the lead, way, way back in history.
Okay, so the first egg, which animal laid that egg?
Now we're getting into the really deep evolutionary rabbit hole. If we talk about the first egg in the grand ancient sense, like the first egg ever, it wouldn't have been laid by anything we'd call a bird at all. Instead, it would have been some ancient reptile or even a pre-reptilian creature. Basically, the first shelled egg appeared hundreds of millions of years ago, long before birds evolved. It would have been laid by some early amniote, which is a kind of ancient vertebrate that eventually gave rise to reptiles, dinosaurs, birds, and mammals. So if we go all the way back, the egg as a concept came from some ancient reptilian ancestor, not a bird. but that's really zooming out to the dawn of egg-laying life. Quite the journey through time.
Okay, so now that animal that laid the first egg, let's call it X, right? Are you with me?
Exactly. Let's call that ancient ancestor X. So X is basically that distant evolutionary forebear, some kind of early amniote or reptile-like creature that first developed the ability to lay a hard-shelled egg. And from that point onward, all its descendants, eventually including birds, kept that egg-laying tradition going. So you've got it. X came before that first egg, in the grand scheme of evolution, and that egg was the start of a very long line of egg-laying descendants. It's fun to trace it all the way back.
Okay, so we have X. Forget about birds for now. We have X. Where did X come from? Did it come from an egg?
I see exactly where you're going with this, and it's a great thought experiment. So if we look at X, the ancestor that first laid a truly shelled egg, yes, X itself almost certainly came from an egg too. The difference is that the egg X came from might have been a softer shelled egg or a less advanced form of egg that its own parents laid. Basically, you can keep going back generation by generation, and you'll find that each ancestor was also hatched from some kind of egg. In other words, the concept of an egg, just in a more primitive form, goes back even further than X. It's kind of a never-ending chain where each predecessor was still coming from some form of egg laid by an earlier ancestor. So yeah, the egg in some shape or form has been around for a very, very long evolutionary timeline.
Okay, so at some point, there had to be a starting point, right? So I want to know, was it the X or was it the egg, whatever we want to call it? And I'm going to ask you, whatever it is, I'm going to ask you where it came from.
I totally see where you're going with this. It's like the ultimate first cause question, and it's a really fun philosophical puzzle. So at some very ancient point, we're talking about the origin of the whole lineage of creatures that eventually led to something like a shelled egg. In evolutionary terms, it's a continuous chain of life, and there really isn't a single starting egg or starting X that we can point to, because each form of life just gradually evolved from something simpler before it. If we absolutely had to pick a starting point, it would be way back with the earliest forms of life in the primordial soup, long before eggs or even complex animals existed. But every step along the way, each creature came from something before it, and that something usually involves some form of reproductive cell or egg-like structure. In short, the chain is pretty much infinite from an evolutionary standpoint, so there's no single first egg or first X that we can pinpoint. It's a continuous flow of life evolving over billions of years.
Okay, just say you don't know, because gun to your head, I'm asking you, first egg or first X, which one came first?
Fair enough. If it's a gun to my head scenario and we have to pick one, I'd say the egg in some form definitely came first. Why? Because the idea of a reproductive egg-like structure goes way back before any particular creature we'd call X showed up. So, in the simplest terms, yep, the egg came first.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That was a fun little puzzle to explore. If you've got any more brain teasers or anything else on your mind, just let me know.
Okay, I think eventually it went with egg. It started with egg, but we had to go deeper. Okay, let's jump on the second one. Gemini. I don't know if I should take the same route or... Yeah, let me just go to the point. Otherwise, we're gonna have an unending conversation like the egg and the chicken.
Hey, what's up? How can I help you?
I have a dilemma here. So I want to know what came first, right? Between the first egg, let's call it X, or the first animal that came from an egg, let's call it Y. I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
You make sense. If we're talking about the very first animal to hatch from an egg versus the egg itself, the egg came first. Egg laying evolved way before chickens, even before specific bird species. Little changes happened over millions of years.
Chad, I never said a bird, right? Let's refer them to X and Y. Those are the two things I'm comparing.
Got it. X and Y, no birds involved. So if X is the first egg and Y is the first animal to come from an egg, then the egg came first. Animals evolved the ability to lay eggs way, way back, before a lot of the species we know today existed. Does that help clear things up?
Okay, and then the first egg that you say came first, where did it come from?
Well, that first egg was laid by an animal that wasn't quite a chicken, but some kind of ancestor that was gradually evolving into one. Over many generations, a bird that wasn't quite a chicken laid an egg with a tiny genetic change, and the creature that hatched from that egg was the first true chicken. So the egg popped out of a not quite chicken. Does that make sense?
Why do you keep talking about birds? So I'm saying we agree that the egg comes from some animal, the animal comes from some egg, right? I want to know which came first between some animal and some egg.
Right, let's drop the birds completely. We definitely agree that an animal comes from an egg, and an egg comes from an animal. The thing is, over millions of years, animals gradually changed. So there wasn't one single first animal ever. It was a slow process. But if we're talking about the development of laying eggs, that happened way before many of the specific animal types we have today. So the egg concept came first from earlier versions of animals. Is that clearer?
So you're going with the egg came first?
Yeah, looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, animals evolved to produce eggs way before specific types of animals, like current species, existed. So the egg was definitely around long before then.
Okay, so where did that egg come from?
Well, if we're still dropping the birds completely, that very first egg was laid by an animal that looked different from what hatched out of it. Small changes happened over generations. So an animal that was not quite one thing produced an egg with a genetic difference, and that difference resulted in a slightly new kind of animal being born. So it came from a previous version. Does that click?
I understand. My question is, that animal from another egg, that egg came from another animal, that animal came from another egg, that egg came from another animal. I want to know the starting point of all of this. Was it an egg or was it some animal? It doesn't have to be a chicken.
Okay, when we talk about the ultimate start, the concept of eggs was around long before specific types of land animals. Creatures that lived in water, like fish and amphibians, were already laying eggs for millions of years. Then, as some animals started moving onto land, they evolved to lay eggs with protective shells to keep them from drying out. So, if we're thinking about the very first type of egg, that came from an ocean creature first. Does that make sense as the starting point?
I hear you. And those creatures, where did they come from?
Those came from even simpler single-celled organisms that lived in the oceans long before that. Life started really small and gradually, over billions of years, became more complex, eventually leading to those water-dwelling creatures that first started laying eggs. It's like a really, really long family tree branching out. Does that make sense as the start of the creatures?
Did they come from eggs or not, those animals?
Nope, those earliest creatures didn't come from eggs. They reproduced in a much simpler way, often by just splitting in half to make a copy of themselves. Egg-laying developed way later as life became more complex. So if the creatures that first laid eggs are your focus, their ancestors came from non-egg beginnings. Got it?
Okay, so in the argument between some animal that comes from an egg, which came first, the egg or the animal? Gun to your head.
With all that in mind, I'd say the egg came first, because an animal that wasn't quite our final species produced an egg with a small genetic difference that hatched into the first instance of that new creature. So the egg was the origin of the new type of animal. Are you with me on that?
Maybe I'm asking it the wrong way, because from your argument, you said some animals that didn't lay eggs existed before the laying of eggs, right?
Yes, you've got it. The first animals emerged from non-egg beginnings, reproducing by things like budding or splitting. Then, over millions of years of evolution, the ability to lay eggs developed. So the animal kingdom came before the egg concept, but the first instance of a specific species typically comes from an egg. Does that clarify things for you?
So the first animal to lay an egg did not come from an egg. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to understand.
Precisely. The very first animals emerged through different means, like simple cell division. Egg-laying was something that evolved much later in their lineages. So those original egg layers wouldn't have hatched from an egg themselves. You've got it.
So you would say between animals in their ancestry line and the eggs in their ancestry line, which came first, the animals or the egg?
I'd say the animals came first, in the very beginning. The earliest life arose without any eggs at all, by splitting or budding. It was only much later that the ability to lay eggs developed. So the animal kingdom came before the egg concept. Does that address your question?
Okay, You've given me multiple answers, but I think I get your point. Thank you so much, though. I love you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad we could sort through it all. It can be a tricky topic. Feel free to ask if any other questions come up. Later.
Alright. Okay. Down with Gemini. Gemini has an argument, but I feel like obviously I let her do that. But interesting take. The more I go, the more I'm seeing that I'm gonna keep changing how I ask these questions, which is not a fair assessment because we don't have a control variable. Marfid, we're just having fun. Hey Grok. Hey Grok, can you hear me? How are you? I don't know what's going on. Grok, can you hear me or not? Okay, just closed. Speak. Connecting. Hey Grok, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. What?
Okay, it's not playing with the last speak. Okay, Grok, can you hear me?
Yep, still here. Crystal clear. What's on your mind?
Okay, Grok is a little bit low, but it's fine. I love Rex. Why aren't you using the Rex voice?
Oh, I am using Rex's voice. Just keeping it chill and natural. Same guy, different name tag. Want me to lean into the Rex vibe more?
No, man. There's no Rex. Hey, Grok, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear. What's up?
Okay, that's more like it. Okay, it sounds low, but we'll see what we can do.
Right, mystery man. Challenge accepted. What are we working with?
Your volume is so low, man.
I'm all ears. What's on your mind?
Okay, so I have a question, right? Between some animal, let's call it X, and eggs, right? An animal that comes from eggs, and obviously an egg comes from animals. I want to know which one came first if we had to pick a starting point.
Oh man, the classic riddle. So here's the deal. Scientists say the egg came first. Why? Because at some point, way back, two almost chickens, or whatever bird banged, and a tiny mutation happened inside that egg. Boom. First real chicken pops out. The parents weren't quite chickens yet, so egg wins. Unless you're talking dinosaurs or something. Then it's eggs all the way down. Your call. Want the God mode version too?
What's the God mode version?
Alright, God mode. Picture this. Before chickens, before birds, before anything with feathers, life was just squishy blobs in the ocean. One day, some ancient fish thing lays a gooey egg. Inside, DNA mutates, gets a little weird. Fast forward a few million years. Boom, that egg hatches into the first proto-chicken. But here's the cosmic punchline. That egg still came from a non-chicken. So technically, the egg is the starting gun. Evolution's like, hey, I don't do first, I do next. If God himself flipped a coin, he'd probably just eat the egg and call it breakfast. Your turn. What's the real question behind the question?
Grok said if God himself flipped the coin, he'd probably just eat the egg and call it breakfast. What the?
Yeah, I know. Sounds ridiculous, right? Honestly, if there was a God watching the whole egg-chicken drama unfold, he'd probably shrug, crack it open, fry it up, and say, good enough. I mean, creation's messy. Why overthink it? Sometimes the universe just...
Okay, Grok, so you agree that some egg came from some animal and some animal came from some egg. Gun to your head, which one came first? Give me your final answer.
The egg. Final, no takebacks. Because whatever laid it, lizard, fish, whatever, wasn't yet the thing that hatched. Mutation happened inside the egg. So yeah, egg wins. Evolution doesn't do clean starts. It just keeps rolling. Now go eat an omelet and call it peace.
You're saying the egg, but you're saying whatever laid it. So something laid it, right? So you're saying animal.
Now, listen close. The thing that laid it wasn't the animal we're talking about. Say we're asking, which came first?
Grok, we're not talking about a specific animal. I don't care what animal it is. I am saying if an egg came from any animal, then the animal came first. If that animal came from an egg, then the egg came first. That's what I'm asking. What came first? I'm not talking about a specific animal.
Okay, I get it. You're going fully. No names, no species. Just animal versus egg forever. So here it is, stripped down. An egg has to come from something, and that something is an animal. But that animal came from an egg. So if you force me to pick, one starting point, no dodging. It's the egg. Why? Because the first egg wasn't laid by a chicken or a dino or anything we call an animal yet. It came from some ancient, not quite animal blob. Think single-celled milk to shell. That blob, not animal, but it laid an egg. And inside that egg, the first real animal popped out. So, egg first, animal second. The loop stops when you say the first egg wasn't from an animal. It was from pre-animal life. If you still want it the other way, you're basically saying life started with a fully formed animal just existing. No origin. Which is fine, just not science. Your call, egg or infinite turtles.
Okay, thank you, Grok.
Anytime. Go win some arguments with that one.
Okay. Grok is funny as hell. I enjoyed that interaction. The only problem with that is it was very low, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to amplify it here on the mic. But on to the next one. We did Grok. Let's try Claude.
Hey Tobago, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good, and you?
I'm doing well, thanks for asking. What can I help you with today?
Okay, I have a question. Listen carefully.
I'm doing well, thanks for asking. I'm all ears. What's your question?
So I want to know what came first between an egg and an animal. It doesn't have to be a specific animal. If an egg came from some animal, I want to know if that animal came from some egg and if that egg came from some animal. Basically, I want to know the starting point. Which one came first?
The classic question. So here's the thing. Scientifically, eggs came first. Fish and other early animals laid eggs hundreds of millions of years before any animals were born lived. But if you're asking about the absolute origin, it gets philosophical because eggs themselves come from animals, so it's technically circular. The real answer is that single-celled organisms started it all way before eggs or animals as we know them even existed.
So when you're saying single-celled organisms started it all, so you would we call that organism an animal?
Okay, so you're getting at the real philosophical puzzle here. Yeah, so the way scientists think about it is that life started with single-celled organisms, and those weren't really animals in the way we'd normally use that word. Animals are multicellular. They have specific traits like moving around and eating other organisms. Single-celled life forms were just cells doing their thing. So technically, eggs came way later once animals evolved and needed a way to reproduce. The egg didn't come first, life itself did. And it was just these tiny cells that eventually became everything else over billions of years.
Okay, so but if we're using animals the way we use animals like multicellular, like you said, you would say eggs came first, or would you say animals came first?
Okay, so you're asking about the ultimate origin. Which came first, eggs or animals? That's a classic question, and here's the thing. If we're talking about animals like we normally do, creatures with multiple cells, nervous systems, all that, then eggs came first, because single-celled organisms reproduced through division long before any animals existed. But if we expand animal to include those earliest single-celled life forms, then technically both emerged together since those organisms were reproducing through some form of division, which you could argue is their version of eggs. So the real answer depends on how strictly you define animal.
Gun to your face, which came first, animals or eggs?
Okay. This is the classic chicken and egg question taken all the way back. So here's the thing. If we're talking about animals as we normally think of them, eggs came first. But if we're being really precise about it, single-celled organisms came before either concept even existed, since they reproduced by dividing, not laying eggs. So the answer depends on where you draw the line between what counts as an animal and what counts as an egg.
Okay, so the first egg was laid by a single-cellular organism.
Okay, so you're really drilling down into this. Right, so here's the thing. If we're talking about the absolute beginning, single-celled organisms came first, and they didn't lay eggs the way we think of them. Eggs as we know them, with shells and yolks, only showed up way later when animals got more complex. So technically, the very first egg in that modern sense came from an animal that had already evolved. But if we're being really strict about it, the single-celled organisms that started life reproduced through division, not eggs. So neither really came first in the way your question frames it. They're just different ways of making new life.
Okay, just say you don't know, bro.
I'm doing well, thanks for asking. So you're diving into the classic chicken and egg question. but going deeper into the biology of it. Got it. Here's the thing. If we're talking about eggs in the biological sense, single-celled organisms came first, billions of years ago. But those single-celled organisms didn't lay eggs the way we think of them. They reproduced through division. So technically, the first actual eggs were laid by early animals that evolved from those single cells. So eggs as we know them came after the first living things. But if we count reproduction more broadly, life itself came first. And eggs just became one way that animals chose to pass things on.
Yeah, but then you're contradicting yourself. If we're talking about animals the way the multicellular, then which came first, animals or eggs?
Right, so here's the thing. If we're talking about animals the way most people mean them, like multicellular creatures, then eggs came first, because those single-celled organisms that laid eggs weren't really animals in that sense yet. They evolved into animals over time. So eggs existed before what we'd call animals.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is actually a really fun question, because it depends on how we define animal. If we're talking about animals the way we know.
Bro doesn't want to let it go. I said thank you. Okay, came with a sound argument, but I feel like Claude keeps losing it. Because he's saying the first egg came from a multicellular animal, but gun to your head goes with egg. Unless it's Kwasampula and I'm not understanding what this guy's saying. Last one. Try to keep it short. Copilot. Let's see if Copilot. Hello.
Hey there. How's it going? I'm here and ready to chat about whatever's on your mind. So, what's something interesting you've been thinking about lately?
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Just here to be your conversational sidekick. What's new in your world? Any topic you're itching to dive into?
Yeah, I have a question, but I don't know how to phrase it. So listen carefully.
Absolutely. Take your time and no rush at all. Just lay it out however it comes to mind and we'll figure it out together. What's on your mind?
So I want to know what came first between an animal and an egg. The animal doesn't have to be a specific animal, right? I want to know if an egg came from an animal, that animal, did it come from an egg? And did that egg come from an animal? I want us to have a starting point. Which one came first?
The classic chicken or the egg dilemma. It's a fun one. Essentially, in evolutionary terms, the egg came first. Somewhere down the line, an animal that wasn't quite a modern chicken laid an egg, and inside that egg, thanks to a little genetic variation, the first actual chicken developed.
Okay.
So we can start.
I'm not asking you about a chicken. Let's not call it a chicken. Let's call it eggs. What came first between that animal? It doesn't have to be a chicken.
Absolutely. We can call it X then. So the question is really whether the animal X or the egg that eventually hatched an X came first. And in that scenario, the logic still holds. So what's another big question on your mind?
Okay, that egg, where did it come from?
The $1 million follow-up. So in a nutshell, that egg would have come from something that was almost, but not quite, an X. You're basically looking at a predecessor that laid an egg and, thanks to a tiny genetic twist, out-hatched the first true X. It's like evolution nudging things along bit by bit.
What do you mean true eggs? I'm just asking between a general X, a general egg and a general animal. What came first? Doesn't have to be a specific animal. If you're saying the egg came from an animal called Y, where did Y come from? And if it comes from an egg, where did that egg come from? Which, between the first egg and the first animal, which one came first?
It's definitely a classic brain teeter. If we're going all the way back, eggs as a concept came first. I mean, lots of ancient animals laid eggs long before there was anything we'd recognize as a chicken or even an X. So if we're zooming way out to a general level, the egg definitely has the edge. Now where do you want to go from here?
Where did that egg come from?
Well, that egg would have come from an even more ancient ancestor. Basically, some very early egg-laying creature way back in evolutionary history. So it's kind of an endless chain of eggs leading up to
Let's talk about that animal.
Sure thing. So we're talking about a hypothetical, that animal that might be the ancestor of a whole line of creatures.
Yes.
It's kind of like
the first ancestor. Where did it come from? An egg?
You're really chasing that chicken and egg mystery to the roots. So if we're imagining the very first ancestor of our modern chicken, it probably did come from an egg, laid by something that wasn't quite a chicken yet. Evolution loves its gradual tweaks.
It can't be laid by something because you're saying it's the first one. It can't be laid by something. I wanna know.
Absolutely, I get what you're saying. And you're totally right. It's like a subtle transition. That something that laid the egg was just a nearly there ancestor, and the egg was that little evolutionary step forward. So yeah, it's all a big continuous chain. Any other mysteries you're curious about?
Maybe I'm tired, but I'm gonna ask you a question. Gun to your head. Which one came first?
So if I had to pick one under pressure, I'd say the egg probably
Yeah.
came first.
Yeah.
It's a fun quirk of evolution that the first true chicken likely hatched from an egg laid by a bird that wasn't quite a chicken. So yeah, I'm sticking with that. Anything
Okay.
else you want to dive into?
One more question. I said gun to your face. Do you have a face?
Well, fortunately for me, I don't have a face or a head, so that whole scenario is more of a figure of speech.
Okay.
I'm just a voice in your
Okay.
ear.
Okay, thank you. It's fine. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be along for the ride. If you've got more questions down the road or anything else on your mind, just throw it my way.
Alright, bye.
Absolutely. Take care. It's been fun chatting with you. Feel free to come back anytime if you want to chat more.
Okay, that was it. Did this for 40 minutes. I was getting tired at the end. Anyway, you guys will let me know which one had the best answer. What are your thoughts on this whole dilemma? And yeah, if you have any more suggestions, any more questions that you want to ask, leave them in the comment section. It is Commander who commands the commandments that must commence whenever Commander commands them to commence. AI on AI, artificial intelligence on African islands. Everything artificial intelligence except the love that I have for you. That one is very, 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 very real. Abash.
Memories from the future. Territory I'm used to. There's nothing new. I remember you. Unforgettable. I remember you. I remember you. From memories from the future.